Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this coffee chat with Cognition360 and some of our current partners. Let's see, I've got, if you guys will go ahead and unmute your cameras, get everybody in here. Cheers to all of you. Again, I'm Christy Perez. I'm the Partner Success Manager here at Cognition360, and also have Bjorn Zreloff with us. Bjorn is going to be facilitating this call for us today. So we will have our Q&A open and our chat. We're going to save some time at the end for any of those of you on the call today that have questions. Feel free to put those in the Q&A or the chat. I'll be manning that. We're going to answer some of those as we're going, and then we'll also save some time at the end. So at this time, Bjorn, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christy. Grateful to be here with you, the panelists, and all those attending live, and all those who will hopefully see a recording of this at some point, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But it's been fun getting ready for this coffee chat, and we got a chance to meet each other a little bit last week, or prep a little bit for it. And you know, we want to make this as conversational as possible, and do our best as actors, and pretend that we're all together sitting around having a cup of coffee. And please, like Christy said, jump in with any questions, and we'll go from there. So we have about 30 minutes. It's not a lot of time. Based on the user group experience and past experiences with panelists like this, or panels like this, I could talk about with these gentlemen, these ladies and gentlemen, for hours about their experience, and we have a range of experience here today. So we'll do about 30 minutes, and then we do have, like Christy said, the chat. So 15 minutes of Q&A, I should say. So the focus today is, you know, how do we hear some stories, hear some transformational stories about operational efficiencies, or through operational efficiencies, and profitability, customer satisfaction. And so let's get started with Brent, if you don't mind, doing a quick intro of yourself. Brent, I'll give you a little bit of a soft intro for you. You know, if I were to start an MSP today, I'd want to have a COO that also was a CPA. I have a fond appreciation for the finances and the financial health of organizations, and also the types of brains that are typically CPA brains. So that's a double threat in my mind. And so Brent, with that, hopefully I didn't screw that up too badly, but if you could give us an intro, your role now, and then an example of, you know, how you're using data to drive profitability, operational efficiencies, you know, in your team or your organization.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just quickly, I came to Vegas to retire. It'll be 3 years in June, and I had an MSP in the Northwest, sold that, came here. My son-in-law was working for iTech Las Vegas, and felt like maybe I could add some value. And so I had a conversation with the owner and came out of retirement a few days a week to help him. And it's been a positive experience, I think, for everyone. We started trying to pull data from ConnectWise. The basic reports were somewhat limited in terms of the data that we wanted. And so we ran into Cognition at an IT Nation a couple of years ago, became a partner, and started pulling the data, which is much more useful. It's the same data that they're pulling from the ConnectWise database, but the way that it's presented has been much more useful in terms of, you know, managing by the numbers. And I spend most of my day managing by the numbers, it seems like. I don't know if that's what you want. If that's enough, if you need more, let me know.
Yeah, we'll come back to that, absolutely. And I'm curious to hear more when we circle around on your use of data for individual team members, i.e. scorecards. That's always, you know, people being the most, in my opinion, the most important resource that we have in our organizations, and making sure they feel like have, you know, defined targets to shoot for, right? And goals to shoot for. So thank you, Brent. Appreciate that. And I'll spare you my attempt at dad humor about your last name, but you know, good fellow. You are a good fellow in my book. Yeah. Anyway.
It's not the gangster family. It's not good fellas.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, with my name, I've heard it all over the years. So it's interesting. Names are interesting to me. So, John, I'll go to you next. And one of the things I learned about you and getting to know you in the preparation for this is that you are, I would call the real deal certified data analytics guy. I haven't met one of those recently, but so that was good to see. And I have a huge appreciation for, you know, business analysis and data, and of course data analysis falls under that as well. So yeah, if you could do a quick intro and you know, maybe a quick example of how you're trying to drive operational efficiencies with data.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm a business analyst, and I was hired shortly after our team started into our Cognition360 journey in 2021. My company is Concept Technologies, and we are in Nashville, Tennessee. We have about 150 clients and 50 employees, so that's about our size. And for us, stepping into the data for the first time, it was really it was an eye opener. It was helped us realize that we have tickets going all the way back to 2012. So we've been using ConnectWise forever. So we've had a lot of different managers come in, lots of regime changes over the course of time. And as a result, we found that we had all sorts of names for different statuses, all sorts of takes on workflows. And we kind of first took our steps into Cognition360 as like a journey to standardize and find what are some ways that we can trim all of this down so that we can actually get to a place where the data is useful. And I think that set a really good foundation for our organization for all of the different reports. Getting that right first really allowed us to gain insights in all the other areas once we got on a sustainable and common operating picture across our organization.
Common operating picture, SOP, right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing from all that, and you know, people process technology, the three-legged stool that I've been talking about or been involved with in conversations for, it seems like forever now. But yeah, I mean, you know, you have the people, the most important resource, and they are trying to achieve goals. So you want to try to define processes for them to follow, and then you want to have systems that help them follow those processes, right? And then manage that, right? So yeah, it seems simple. It is simple as far as when you talk about it or whiteboard it. The actual, you know, implementation and consistency and you know, a process for the process, that's the hard part, you know. Absolutely. To me, at least for me it is, and in the organization I work with. So that's great. Yeah, journey to standardize. Thank you for that. And I'll just say that if I were advising any company or starting a company today, especially an MSP, one of the roles that I would definitely have in my staffing plan is a business analyst. I've heard that throughout the years. You know, we have the CPA. I would definitely have someone with finance background. I would certainly have a business analyst that understands data. And then I'll turn it over to Gary. And Gary, you're up in Rhode Island, and you've been in the MSP space before they were calling it the MSP space. So looking forward to you giving us an intro.
Bjorn.
What's that?
You're making him look old.
Oh no,
okay.
that said with lots of respect. He has, you know, a better hairstyle than I do.
I have to pick on Gary. I have to pick on him.
Nothing I haven't heard. It's okay.
Yeah, it's exactly.
You know, although I could, hey, at least I still have hair. You know.
Exactly. He does. Very, very nice head of hair.
Kind of a bird on you, Bjorn, I think.
It's okay. I've heard it all too. So Gary, as far as your intro. If you don't mind, give us your current role, position,
Sure.
a little bit about your MSP, and then your efforts to drive operational efficiency.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we've got a CPA and a data analyst, and running our MSP for over 25 years and being in ConnectWise for close to 20, like John, although he gets to blame other people. Nobody here, I guess I get the blame for everything because I am our designer, implementer, and analyst. So I've spent many years as a result of being in a peer group and actually doing some reorganization for clarity and accuracy with C-level a few years ago. We've always had a drive for metric-based efficiencies, and I've spent lots of time doing reporting in Excel and digging into the SQL and trying to figure out, how to pull all the numbers together to get some of these great reports. And having gone through the solution pavilions at IT Nation and all these places for years, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that. Well, I probably wasted 10 years of my life doing reporting and looking at things the wrong way. And having been with Cognition for a couple of years now, the reporting is essentially done for me. There's lots of different perspectives of the data, and having it in the Power BI platform, being able to slice it and dice it and look at ranges and drill downs, things that I could spend months developing for one report, we get that on day one. And just being able to share that with our team and using some of that with some of our other dashboards and all that, it helps us to really tie the pieces together and figure out which way's up, which way's down, or where are the holes in the bucket. So it's been not only a time saver, but probably even added a lot of accuracy to our reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the reporting journey, the one I personally have been on, when I was with the MSP world and in the MSP, not MSP world, but in the MSP, and then working with other companies who also have had their reporting journey, right? So I'll come back to that in a minute. I don't see any questions that have popped in so far. Christy, have you seen any? Okay.
No, we have had a few others join since we started. So those of you that are new that didn't hear me at the beginning, our Q&A and chat is open. So we're planning on answering any questions. If you have any just questions for peers in general or for Bjorn. Bjorn has a very lengthy background in the MSP space on the operational side and on the ConnectWise side. So feel free to put those questions in. We are going to save some time at the end for that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so we're kind of at the halfway point of the 30 minutes, but so let's get into a little bit. I've heard a couple of things in your answers today. Let's start with the reporting tool journey. It's one thing I wanted to hit on. So Gary, you talked about that. You've been in the space, you had 10 years. What was it that sort of brought you? Is there something specific that made you look at Cognition360? What was it about it? And I'm going to ask all three of you guys this question. So I'll go back to Gary since he mentioned it, and John and Brent, you got to kind of work on your answers. But what is there? Was there something specific? You've had this journey, you've been around forever, you've seen all the tools that are out there. So why was this the tool, or why is this the tool now?
Well, we've looked at different tools over the years and tried some, and ultimately what it came down to in this case is the breadth of the reporting and being able to leverage the Power BI platform. We thought was a very good way to do it, and more importantly, our ability to help change the platform. I can't even tell you how many tickets that I've put in, although Christy can probably tell me. Many of them are, hey,
everybody knows you, Gary. Everybody knows you.
I would really like to see, this a slightly different view of the data.
Mhm.
And usually, or add a column or, whatever it is. And usually those requests are implemented if they're reasonable within 24, 48 hours. The support team has been phenomenal.
Right.
And my ability to improve our vision of the data with their help has been extremely helpful. And, and that goes, from top to bottom. And, when I've got questions, I get many people to help respond and answer them and point me in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of tools that have been built over the years, by MSPs for MSPs, I mean, including in the reporting space or data analytics space, and that's been fantastic. I mean, my personal, direct experience, but then also other clients I've seen go through the same experience. Every tool has its, everything has pros and cons, but every tool has its strengths and weaknesses, and for me. For one of my clients, is the ability to take the production data, I call the production data, take the database and move it off into a data warehouse, right? And then once the data gets in the raw data gets in there, Cognition has then transformed. I'm no data warehouse, guy, but transform that data into data sets that really are tuned and specific, and that way you're not affecting your production data. So that's been a big part.
And beyond the other part of that is because they've got a copy of our data historically, they help us to find mistakes in the way we've coded billing rates where people didn't have the right, and they have the ability to say, you know what, we want everybody to do this. They can actually fix the data. Historically,
Okay.
reporting, while we make changes going forward for that more accurate reporting going forward, they can do it so retrospectively we have accurate reporting also. I could never do that on my own,
Right.
or not easily at least.
No, you're right. I mean, one of the most valuable things for me when I was, either month to month or year over year, or comparisons, right? And if I'm looking at apples to oranges, that doesn't make sense, right? I have to I need to kind of go into John. I'll go to John. All the different regime changes. Today this let's call it service type or work type is being used this way, right? But 5-10 years ago, the same work type exists, but it was used in a completely different way. So I can't, even though it says the same thing, it doesn't mean the same thing. So maybe you can address, I know you don't have necessarily a reporting journey, but you have been on it since 2021. And so maybe your reporting journey is sort of that data cleanup aspect. So what's specifically going on there?
Yeah, one of the key moments for us, I think, is when we got into what is now one of our favorite reports. It's the common issues report, which breaks out your ticket subtypes and several other things by the amount of labor and volume, ticket labor and ticket volume. And ultimately, it can really tell you a lot about the way that one of your customers is using your labor, and what areas of their organization require the most attention. But as we jumped into that, we saw, oh my gosh, we all have our own different interpretations, like you brought up, our own interpretations of what that status means. And we realized we really needed to cull it down a little bit. But I will say overall, just having the initial framework in these different reports allows you to see right off the bat if there's a mess or if you're kind of clear. If it's a mess, it's usually because we've been using either the tool differently than it was designed for, or we just have a lot of different interpretations in our different teams. So I gotta echo what Gary was saying. A lot of times it's been the responsiveness that we needed was reaching out and saying, hey, what is this data point really coming from? Like, what is this data point, so that we can get a better understanding of how we're affecting it, and what our business processes are doing to move that dial. And so we have learned a lot about the way that ConnectWise data works in that process and understanding the reports. So
if you find, quote unquote, dirty data, garbage in, garbage out, if you find a GIGO situation, are you leveraging Cognition360 to then change specific step in a process, or, and then roll that out to the team? Is that what I'm
There
hearing?
might be some cases where we ask for something custom, where maybe the way that we charge for labor, or we have a certain metric within our business, we need that tweaked. But for the most part, it's just understanding, like, where is that data point coming from, and they're so quick to point that out for us and help guide that, so that we can go back and do that cleanup on our end.
Right. Okay. Brent, what about you and your reporting journey? I mean, you had your MSP up in Portland for a while, and you found Cognition here recently. Is there something that specifically attracted you to agreement profitability? I think is what we've talked about so far. Was that one of them, or was there something about Cognition360 that drew you in, or drew your organization in?
No, I mean, I think Gary and John did a good job of explaining, some of the value that comes from Cognition. When we first took a look at Cognition, it was almost overwhelming. There was so much there. And so depending on your job role, you really have to drill into the areas that are most concerned to you. And I think I mentioned last week, we use Gino Wickman's EOS program to run our business, to use the process and accountability there. And one of the tenets of that is the scorecard, the data piece. And we go through that every week, and a good number of those data points come out of Cognition. The service team is bonused on those numbers. And the old adage, you can expect what you inspect. And that's what drives, the behaviors that you want out of your people.
I like that. I don't know that I've ever heard expect
I don't
what you
think I have
inspect.
either.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'll write that one down.
I've heard, manage, you can't manage what you can't measure, but not inspect what you inspect. I like that a lot, actually. Is this service, we don't necessarily turn this into a service compensation conversation, but it is, I've actually been directly involved with a couple of situations where we went from not having a variable comp in service to then having one, and then actually moving back. We decided so we had our own sort of journey with that as we grew. Is there that metric around the bonusing on variable service comp? Is that something you can dial in? And what are you getting out of Cognition to give you? What is helping you do that?
Well, as I mentioned, we use the scorecarding piece in EOS, and a lot of the data points do come out of Cognition. But the bonus pool that applies to the service team is given to the service manager. He looks at those scorecards and he allocates. It's not totally subjective in that case. He does quarterly conversations with those folks based on those data points, and he bonuses based on those data points. So they know, and they get updates every single week in a weekly meeting. They know where they stand, and if they're below goal 3 weeks in a row, then it becomes an issue, and we all talk about it.
Right. Okay. As far as time to get to the data, right? So I think that's another discussion point around data. How long is it taking me to actually generate whatever data I'm looking for? Let's talk about utilization right now, process utilization, or pro services utilization, or project profitability, or project services utilization, right? How long, what's the change of how long did it take me to generate this before Cognition360, and what is it doing now, right? What's the before and after picture? Gary, going back to you, you had mentioned utilization, which is one of the core, I think, fundamental things that we try to get an understanding of as MSPs and operators, right? How our most expensive resources, our most valuable resources are our people, and we also want to make sure that they're not being overworked, right? So, and the quote unquote that they're working on the best thing for them and their skill set. What's that world look like in Cognition360, and why is that different? for you now with Cognition 360?
There's actually two parts of it. One is, in our case, those professional services engineers, those are the billable ones, and bringing in that portion of, our income, because they're, some of our engineers are, fixed cost because they're, included with our agreement for the unlimited labor, but those pro services guys are essentially billed by the hour. So looking at that utilization and making them aware from week to week on how they're doing as part of our pro services weekly meeting, it's one of the pages that we look at and comparing, is all your time in, because that's a different problem, but of the available hours, how many of those are really invoiceable? What's the potential there?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get that up into that 75–80% range on a weekly basis. By the time you're done with, meetings and all that, it's a clear picture of how good are you managing your schedule. And then the other one that you referred to is, progress on projects. ConnectWise, I think, has a bug where, if you look at balances remaining, it doesn't do the math properly. Cognition does, how many hours left on that project, and it's simple math, but they have a nice view that breaks that down for us, and we can very quickly review our projects and see how many hours are left with the correct math.
Right. We talked about profitability, and something that's near and dear to my heart is agreement profitability. I know we have a couple minutes here in the 30 minutes. So Brent, let me come back to you on agreement profitability from a CPA's perspective. And you're a data-driven guy. I mean, what is it about the Cognition 360 agreement profitability? Because I've seen many versions of profitability over the years. What is it that gets you jazzed as a CPA when you look at the Cognition 360 agreement profitability?
Yeah, well, what we look at is gross margin on those agreements. And even if you have fixed fee agreements, you still want your loaded labor costs in there, and that contributes to your gross margin on those agreements. Service leadership has best in class numbers for gross margin, and we try and manage to those best in class numbers as best we can.
No, absolutely. And is that something that you've dug into yet, John, in your analyst journey?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we look at that report pretty religiously because in part it helped us also standardize and make sure that we were using correct cost allocation to all of those agreements. The different additions all have their own costs. But it also just really opened up our eyes to maybe some of our clients where we were over profitable on. Maybe we needed to do some retraining on how they could utilize us better, or maybe they've changed enough that we need to relook at the agreement. Or in other cases, of course, you got your less profitable clients, and using some of the other tools, we can see why are we less profitable? How are they consuming our labor resources in a way that is putting them at the bottom of our list, and how can we change that agreement to bring them more in line with the way that they're using our services?
Operationally, how frequently is your team looking at agreement profitability? Is there somebody looking at that? What's the cadence?
For one, we have customer strategy representatives, we call them CSMs, that are really representing those customers, and they're looking at it fairly frequently. But we always like to look at the profitability whenever we're doing a very large project for our customers, thinking, hey, maybe this is a good time to relook at their overall agreement. Now that they're having a major change in their environment, it makes sense perhaps now to look at signing up for a new flat fee for their monthly service.
Yeah, I mean, one of the use cases of that report that it's been unique in my journey that I've heard about is that there was a COO of an organization, pretty large organization, that would use that agreement profitability report with the target hours, target profitability, right, gross profit, and he would be very aware of who his new onboarded clients were. So he would kind of segment them separately, right? So here are the for guys that are in the first 6 months, I expect their profitability to be different. Then he would have a separate grouping that was the next 6, I think he had 6 to 18 months. I think it was this, he broke it up into different segments. And then for those that had been around longer, he would certainly look back and what their trends are, and if there's projects that are going on, if there's new implementation. So that report was sort of his lifeline, and he would look at that every single day because it kind of gave him a radar into how those, in trouble agreements of different groupings were trending. So he could see, hey, hopefully I can get ahead of what was going on. So yeah, so I know we're right at 2:32. I don't see any questions. It's a quiet crowd today. I'm not sure what's going on, but hey, Christy,
I do have a poll. I was going to put up a poll just for those that are left. And then, feel free to pop your questions in right now while we are put that poll up. I know that there were some particular questions that some of you had when you filled out to sign up. We can maybe look at some of those. We were saving about 15 minutes for Q&A. So any of you that have time to stay on, we can look at some of those questions. One of the questions that I saw come in was how quickly can you get onboarded, or what does the onboarding process look like? So maybe if one of you that have been onboarded or went through that onboarding process, if you would mind speaking to that, that would be great. And then I'll kind of look at some other questions that came in on that registration, and we can talk about those.
Well, actually, we actually just re-onboarded for all intents and purposes because we just moved our ConnectWise from on-premise to the cloud. So that kind of required us to kind of almost go back to the beginning and do it. And I put in the ticket that we were moving because I didn't think about it ahead of time and I wasn't well prepared. And our migration was last minute. But, within 24 hours, I was on a call, getting everything set up, ready to go. And all of my reports were back online, a day or two later, because it took some time to get everything refreshed. And, the team's great.
Another thing for everybody that's on the call today, we do have a special. If you sign up for Cognition360 by April 7th, I can't believe I'm already saying April, you will get free onboarding. So onboarding is usually basically 1 month's revenue or 1 month's monthly subscription amount. So it could be a nice savings for you. We are priced by the number of ConnectWise users that you have. I'll put my email address in the chat for all of you. And then also, if any of you want to see a demo of Cognition360, I'm actually doing an open demo tomorrow, where we've got a few people. We kind of do these open demos about once a month, so you can see some of the core reports. So I'll pop that link in the chat for you as well. If you can't make that open demo, if you sign up for it, that recording will be sent to you, or I'm happy to set up a demo with you later on with your team or with you individually as well. Let's see, another question that I saw was, what was the first win you had to get the gold out of Cognition? I guess they were going with the theme of our title. Does anybody have an answer to that one?
First time to value.
First time to value. There we go. That's a good way to say it.
No takers on that.
I think for us, Brent mentioned EOS and the importance in that philosophy of every team member has metrics that they're responsible for. For us, a really huge win where it really clicked with everyone across our organization was once we had all of those scorecards in place that were pointed to reports, and people had access to see that themselves and then also see their peers. And a lot of great things came from that. Seeing how your data is stacked up to the people around you helps you just have a context for how you're doing. And we had a couple people reach out and say, hey, I didn't realize that I was working in this way. I'd made these tweaks to my daily routine, and I'm doing so much better. And that was exciting to hear, that ownership of that data, but also the impacts it was having.
Yeah, for
Awesome.
sure. I mean, if people know what they're being measured against, they tend to improve in those areas.
Yeah.
And if they're confused about what you're measuring them against, then you have a conversation and you adjust, what needs to be measured, or explain where their confusion is, explain that what they're being measured for.
Agreed.
Me too. You can't manage, we can't measure. No, and there's some psychological study that was done on operational efficiency and effectiveness, which are not the same thing. Efficiency is one thing and effectiveness is another, but and it has something to do with, they had two manufacturing lines that were doing exactly the same thing, but just two different teams running the same manufacturing lines. I'm going to butcher the example a little bit, but bear with me. The one line was told that, hey, you guys keep doing what you're doing, no problem, just keep doing it. And then the other line, they couldn't hear what they were saying. They were instructed differently, and all they did was change the lighting. They said, hey, we're going to change the lighting, and we're going to be looking for ways to improve your work, right? So they just literally changed a physical lighting, and so the other team saw that. Well, both teams efficiency and productivity improved, because now there's, hey, we're shining a light on it, somebody's actually looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even better when you actually have data that ties to what they're doing and gives them, specific things to improve or shoot for, that aligns hopefully with the direction of the organization, right? And what we're trying to achieve or change. So yeah. Somebody, I don't know if they're still on the call, but somebody did mention about the prospect to sale to cash process, which quote to cash, it's a great example, in my opinion, in Cognition360 of the breadth of the data and the depth, right? Of it's literally cradle to grave. And the use case there that I found really enlightening, I guess, is there was a company that the CEO was asking the question. It's like, I know I've sold, let's just use round numbers. I know I've sold $1 million, right, of stuff. And for that period, I can only see that there's 100,000 that's been invoiced. Where is it stuck in my process? Why hasn't it been, invoiced yet? So, talk about all the different steps in the process and the process puzzle pieces sticking together and impacting. So I don't know, Brent, if you want to speak to that a little bit at all, or if there's something from your perspective on the quote to cash.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that report is one of those things that tells you what's not built. It answers that question for you, and you can drill in. That's one of the real value points, I think, that we found with Cognition, is you can drill right down to the ticket. You can drill right down to the time entry if you need to.
Right. Yeah, that was a huge benefit in the beginning, and I'm glad you said that. Drilling, the ability to drill down, and if you need to further drill down, if you can define the drill down and the reason, then Cognition can build it, right? But the fact that you can actually open the ticket is or whatever entity you're looking at, opportunity or what have you. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but the other part of it is it's not just drill down, but on some of the screens, like some of the agreement screens where they've got, several widgets, if you select a company on one, all of the successive widgets will highlight or filter, automatically filter to that same company. So it makes it very easy to kind of just find it, because it's not just going down into the underlying data, which is certainly possible too.
Right. I mean, if you go back to the Agreement and Profitability report, I think that's the case you're talking about. It's like, if I'm looking at a list of, however many clients of a specific agreement type, right? And then I want to only look at one of those clients because they're the ones that are sticking out like a sore thumb. Then the next thing I do is click on the client, and it refreshes where I can drill down, to another screen, right? So yeah, good point. Anything else? Go ahead, Brent.
I was just going to say, when you're drilling down like that, you can see if it's a problem with your hard costs or your loaded labor, or what area of that agreement is causing it to not be profitable.
Right. So
I would say that any of these reports that are as high level as that let you see from start to finish, it really has blown down the walls of the silos between our different teams. It allows them to see how they rely on one another and how they are affecting the next stage in the process. So that's really helped foster a lot of healthy conversations of, oh, I didn't know that you were relying on this piece from me. I can get that to you faster. And so we have really been able to remove some of those choke points between, in ConnectWise, you're always looking at it in these different modules. You're looking at finance, you're looking at your projects, you're looking at your service desk. But when you can step back far enough to see from beginning to finish on all of these pieces, those walls kind of start to fall back a little bit. So we've loved that about Cognition360.
That's a great way to sort of wrap things up. I think, ultimately we're my view of the world, one view of the world, is process. Everything's a process. Every little thing I do is a process. And if you think about an organization, you have teams, and then the teams are responsible for certain things, and people within the teams are responsible for certain things, and somebody gets an input, right? And then they take the action, and then they're hopefully going to provide a quality output to the next puzzle piece or process piece, right? And so removing the choke points between teams, I think that's what you said, or blow down the silos, blow down the walls. I think that's what you said. That around that concept is huge, right? And that's business process analysis, finding out where those inefficiencies are and trying to get a little bit better. Yeah, great quote. I like it. There's some quotable quotes today.
I know.
It's good stuff.
Make sure marketing gets in touch with you on that one.
Yeah. Well, Christy, I'll turn it over to you. John, Brent, Gary, thank you.
Again, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate your time. All of our participants, thank you for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to me. My email's in the chat. Also, put that open demo in the chat for that link. Sign up. Recording will be sent to you if you can't make it. And don't forget about the special free onboarding if you sign up by April 7th. So Bjorn, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the facilitation of this wonderful coffee chat, and look forward to hearing from some of you in the future.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.